Hello, this is Ian Noel Camalotis for Centertainment Media, and this is Chatterbox. So hello again. I'm here with Stephen Cohen, the director of the film Princess Sid, here at the Chicago International Film Festival. First of all, I wanted to start off by congratulating you. This is you won the Hugo Award for the Chicago one.
Award, yes,
yeah, and then this is the second award you've won because you won one a couple years ago. What was the name of that film again?
That was Henry Gamble's birthday party, and we won the Silver Q Hugo Award that year. So that was very cool.
You must be one of the popular filmmakers here, especially with just a couple movies.
I mean, I'm a hometown filmmaker. I've been making movies here for 10 years. So, yeah. So the audiences sort of build up over time. If you're in a certain place for long enough, you do decent work, then people, you meet friends and they continue to support you. So it's cool.
Okay. Well, so tell us a little bit more about Princess Sid, because I know some people might not have been able to see it yet, or just a general summary of what it's about.
Yeah, sure. It's about a young 16-year-old girl from South Carolina who is the daughter of a single father, and she needs a little break from South Carolina, so she's sent off to go visit her famous novelist aunt in Chicago. So it's nothing more than just a couple of weeks in Chicago, a niece visiting her aunt, very much sort of like a female bonding, kind of Summer's Tale, and she encounters and falls for a barista, and so there's like sexual exploration and discovery, and also just also generational aunt and niece, two entirely different people, sort of, I guess, in subtle ways teaching each other what they love and how they live, and hopefully they affect each other in nice ways.
Well, that's one of the things I liked about the film, because you had them. There were the aunt and the niece were a little bit different, and they got to really learn about their thoughts of how life is. Now, how did you come up with? Were you the one who wrote the story, or?
I did. I wrote it last summer, and then we shot it a couple months later.
Okay. So what made you want to do that kind of relationship? How, like, really, I don't want to say polar opposites, but they were a little, with their different lifestyles and being exploring their thoughts on life itself.
Yeah. I'd had the first idea a couple years ago. It was set in my imagination a couple years ago. It was set in a different region. It was going to have a different tone. It was not going to be a celebratory Chicago film. And then last summer I was looking for something to shoot, and I thought, oh, this could be a really interesting Chicago movie. But it all originated. There's an author I love a lot named Marilynne Robinson, and I've always thought, what if Marilynne Robinson had a niece who was very different from her and not intellectual, very like physically driven? What would happen if they were in the same home? So that's where it came from. It was just this idea of this author and being challenged, I guess, in some way by a younger person. So yeah, that's sort of what it was.
Try getting, like you said, that challenge, being able to see life in a different perspective.
Yeah, sort of, every now and then we find ourselves in a house with someone that we didn't expect, or we didn't necessarily want to be in a house with, and when you're in a closed space with people, you learn things. You're sort of forced to talk and open up and probe and challenge, and so it seemed like a summer vacation with a strange relative would prove interesting fodder for narrative.
Gotcha. So what got you into filmmaking, and what drew you to this kind of art?
I was a lifelong lover of movies, but I wasn't a film student. I was a theater major, so I started out as an actor. And then around 2005, I started just kind of putting myself through my own film school. So I'm completely self-taught. I've made more or less one movie per year, whether a short or a feature, for the last 10 years. And I've had a very slow kind of learning process. I've never taken a film class. I've never taken a screenwriting class. So it's all been about kind of growing and figuring out what I'm doing on my own.
Gotcha. And then all these ideas are just ideas that you come up with yourself for the films you do?
Yeah, it's a mood, it's a character. It's very rarely plot, because plot is not the first on my list of priorities, as you know because you saw the film. Yeah, no, it's usually just kind of a type of movie I want to make, or the feeling, or if I want to capture an environment or a city. It starts like that, and then I just explore and figure out how to do it on a lower budget, and that's how it usually results.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. How did you find the actors that you had for it? Did you search around or have auditions, or was this one of these were people you kind of knew in the acting field?
I knew some of them, but I use Pascal Rudnicki casting for every movie I make. I've used the same casting directors for the last 7 or 8 years. They bring in hundreds of people for all the roles, and I'm able to meet everyone and figure out who the best person is. So it's boring to talk about, but it's exciting to do. And so PR casting, Mickey Pascal, Jennifer Rudnicki, AJ Links, they're really special. So.
Okay. And one last thing, especially for the audience too, especially since you're self-taught, which is something I actually really admire, because most of the time you hear filmmakers, I went through all these years of school, had to wait this.
Years of school.
So what advice do you have for anyone that wants to get into filmmaking, whether they want to go through school or whether they want to try going the route you did?
I don't know. I mean, as soon as I give advice to someone to not go to film school, that's the person that should have gone to film school. So I don't want to jinx anybody. I don't know. You have to do what's best for you.
Anything like in general, though, not necessarily going to school or anything, but anything in general, what you want to do?
Absolutely. I think honestly, whether you go to film school or not, you should just start making stuff. And the most important thing towards making stuff is setting the date and not pushing. A lot of people like to say, I'm going to shoot in the summer, and then they get to summer and they're like, oh, we're not ready yet, so we're going to push to next year. And then they get to next year and they say, we're not ready yet, we're going to push to next year. Cut to they're 60 years old and have never made a movie. So you have to just it's never going to be the ideal time to make a movie. Just make your thing. Just make it no matter who shows up, and just make sure you have a camera. If you can turn it on, you can make a movie, right? And if it sucks, then move on to the next one.
Well, thank you for taking the time with us, Stephen. Hope you enjoy the rest of the festival, and congratulations again.
Thank you so much. Cool. Thank you.
Hello again, this is Ian Noel Camalotis for Centertainment Media, and I'm here at the Chicago International Film Festival with filmmaker Sean Miller, who is the director of the short film The Replacement. So could you tell us a little bit more about the film, just in general?
Sure. So The Replacement is a sci-fi political thriller. It's a bit of also a little bit of a satire, and it's set in a world where clones are a very everyday occurrence, a new social trend going on, and our film is set in election night when the first clone has been elected president, and his natural-born original, the guy it's all been based off of, is stuck in a dead-end blue-collar job, kind of wondering how it all went wrong, and all of his clones have become, wildly successful, and he's here cleaning toilets. So that's kind of the premise of the film.
Okay, so what brought you into doing that kind of film? Was this like your story, or did you get it from someone else?
Oh no, it's completely an original story, and I mean I have I've been inspired by sci-fi movies of the '80s, Blade Runner, and newer ones like Her, and all sorts of stuff like that. But what really got me interested in the story is the speed at which technology and social movements have been progressing. And they almost seem to be progressing faster than laws or society really keeps up. We're just moving so fast. You look at the side effects of the iPhone or what Facebook has had, and we can't really catch up with the ramifications for it. So we just kind of took that and went to an extreme level of it, and we knew that everyone does AI. And AI is probably going to be a big problem down the road, but with clones, you at least have a face to put on it. And the more we kind of expanded this idea, the funnier it kind of became. If your own clone, was out there, doing things better than you, and there are multiple ones, and they all can vote, and they are taking your job or something. If there's, if you had 100 Ians out there, and they all, they can all link up, mentally. They might start, doing better work than you or something like that. And I just kind of wanted to explore, what happens in a world where something like that were to occur.
Yeah, that is an interesting concept, because there is a lot of AI. Now, there's been a few cloning movies, but most of the time it's more of undercover, like under the ground. You had it just right out there, and then the concept of it being accepted in society, and then the ramifications was actually very unique. Now, was this how did you put this film together? Because that just watching it, it looks so professional that it's like to a point I'm like, this doesn't look like some of the other other short films where it's like they might have had like school equipment, or I mean, some might be professionally done, but this one looked like it was one of those like a Hollywood studio kind of thing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. No, we weren't like a big studio-funded film or anything like that. We were a Kickstarter. We had a successful Kickstarter run. We ran on basically we did a series of fake political campaign ads, which I can talk about more if you want to. But me and my crew, I work with, my wife is my producer on here. Her name's Naz Khan. She's awesome. Love you, honey. She and I have been film partners for a while, and we just have a lot of experience on film. And we know how to cut corners and how to get favors, how to stretch a budget. So we did get, some school rental equipment, some students that helped us, as well as, former colleagues at Columbia College that we'd worked with many, many times, and we just know how to shoot movies and make them look good on a budget. And that's pretty much what we did. And as far as special effects and everything goes, that was just meticulous planning. We knew we only had a couple of effects that we could pull off for our budget, so we were really we wanted to make sure they had a lot of impact when they were actually on screen. So it was just about planning and not being wasteful.
Okay, and you were talking about the political campaigns. That was very unique because normally you do not see trailers for short films, and we were discussing a little bit earlier before we started this interview that it's like one of those, you do a trailer, you're already showing off most of your film, which it's not like big Hollywood films do that except with their main parts, but it's like with short subject films, you only have a short amount of time, and you did something completely different. You went for something that was more of kind of like hinting at the whole world building. So could you tell us a little bit more about like all those different types of trailers you did?
Yeah, sure. So like you said, I mean, for short films, it's a 15-minute movie. If you make a 1-minute trailer, you're showing a significant part of your film. So what we decided to do was basically make some viral marketing type of stuff. We made fake political campaign ads for the first Cologne president, where it's him running and talking to the camera, but we played it completely straight. We didn't try and make it about, dominating the world or taking over or anything at all like that. We just played it really straight that, he's here for the community and he's going to help build the new library and help people get new jobs and help, the clone movement and everything. And by playing it straight, it felt a little bit more creepy and funny. So we just did a whole series of those, and they have a completely different look from the movie, but they're kind of a nice intro into the world. If you were to watch them before seeing the movie, you don't need to, but it certainly is a nice little supplemental thing.
Yeah, it really builds up, so now you know what you expect to go into it.
Yeah.
So one of the things I also wanted to ask too, like what got you into filmmaking, and what are your aspirations for this particular film itself?
Sure. I've always been a huge fan of movies. In fact, I thought like everybody was. Like I grew up, watching like a couple of movies a night with my dad, and the rule was always like you never watch the same movie twice. There's no repeats. So like I got exposed to a ton of movies. Then I found out like not everyone does this. And so when I went to college, one of my before I knew what I wanted to do, I took some broadcasting classes, found out I was pretty good at it, and kind of the rest is history. I just was like, okay, I guess I'm going to keep doing this. And what's the second question? Sorry?
So, like, I wanted to know what your plans are, like, what do you for the film itself?
So, we actually have a treatment for a feature version of this that expands on a lot of the ideas on here on how, and really gets into how a good idea can kind of slowly get society sleepwalking into extinction, essentially, where the best of intentions can lead to hell, essentially. So the feature version plays on that a lot and has the same sense of humor, the same sense of it's not set super far in the future. It's not Star Trek. It's something that conceivably could happen in the next 10, 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I was watching it, it looked like it can be either a full-length feature film or even like a series because of the way that it was structured, and just because it, again, from the trailers, everything seems to be straight, seems to be more like laid back, and then you see the movie, it's a little bit darker, more serious, cinematic kind of look.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and we have a series outline as well. Whichever person approaches us, we'll do either one. So, but yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot you can do in this type of universe. I mean, there's a lot of different stories that can be told as well. So, and the movie, we try and touch on a lot of them. So it's a pretty dense movie, but we try and make it really accessible with having a sense of humor.
Okay. So what are your plans after the festival? Like, do you have other further festivals that the film will be showing at, and do you have any other films that you're going to be planning to do in the next year or so?
Yeah, so our next stop is going to be the Austin Film Festival, and after that, Dallas International and Seattle. We just submitted to Slam Dance. We're finding out if we're getting into there, and Tribeca, and we're going to do the whole festival tour. And once we're done with the festival tour, we'll be releasing the film to the public, online on Vimeo, YouTube, that type of stuff. And we have a couple other shorts and feature projects being developed right now that have a similar kind of feel, a speculative sci-fi, but, in an accessible format.
One last thing I wanted to ask the audience, and something you can speak to the audience directly on. What kind of advice do you have for any aspiring filmmakers, whether it's in directing or writing or even producing, that you can give to anyone that's looking to get into that field?
Sure. So I would say for any aspiring filmmakers, follow your passion, write a movie that you would like to see, but also while you're doing it, think about the resources you have access to. Think of the locations that you have that look cool, would look good on a movie, because those are the things that are going to save you a lot of money to do. And also, actors are huge. Don't just cast your friends. Find people who are good actors, and they'll make your life 100 times better. And always just surround yourself with people who are smarter than you and learn from them and work with them as much as possible and get experience. That's it.
Well, thank you again, Sean, for taking the time to speak with us. Hopefully you guys will be able to see this once it's finally released, and hope you guys enjoy it. Otherwise, thank you again, Sean. And this is Ian for Entertainment Media, signing off. Hello, this is Ian Noel Camalotis for Entertainment Media, and I'm here once again at the AMC River East Theater for the 53rd Chicago International Film Festival, and I'm here with both the writer and the director of the movie Rogers Park, which is a neighborhood here in Chicago. So could you guys both introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'm Kyle Henry, I'm the director.
I'm Carlos Trevino, I'm the writer of Rogers Park.
So this film's here at the Chicago International Film Festival. There's a huge push for city and state films. What made you guys come up with the story, especially you as the writer, that kind of a story of the two different interracial couple relationships?
Well, actually, I think it started with the production idea. We wanted to talk about our neighborhood. We've lived in Rogers Park for about 8 years now, and in fact, it's the only place we've lived since coming to Chicago. And we wanted to center it around our neighborhood. We really appreciate the diversity of the neighborhood. We really appreciate the sort of middle class life, and it's a real cross section of Chicago, I feel like, and the kinds of people who live here. So knowing that we wanted to do a slice of life film about Chicago, Rogers Park seemed the perfect place.
Okay. Was it difficult filming at all in Rogers Park? I know because it can get busy at times. There's a lot of events going on, and we were just talking about how dense the population is in that neighborhood compared to everyone else.
No, actually, I think was one of the easiest, shoots I've had in terms of people opening their homes, their businesses. Chicago is still a place, I think, that there's not a ton of films being shot here, that I think it's quite a novelty, and I think people also really appreciated that we were doing a film in their neighborhood, Rogers Park, which often isn't featured. I mean, it's not Batman or other places that are just going to feature the skyscrapers in downtown. It's going to deal with the lives of real Chicagoans.
The residents of the neighborhood were also really, really great about opening up their businesses and their homes to us. They were really excited about the project too, so it became a real community effort.
Okay, so could you tell us a little bit more, just a general summary, because I know you guys have it featured here, and we're hoping to see this at least in some theaters here in Chicago. But could you tell us a little bit more about the story?
Sure. It's a story about two midlife couples. They're in their 40s. They're both interracial couples, African American and white. And it's like we said, it's a slice of life film. It's a relationship film about these two couples, and they're also linked by having a brother and a sister as one of each of the couples. So,
and I think it's also about the problems that people face in the second great coming of age. We see a ton of stories about 18 to 22-year-olds. Well, guess what? There's another huge coming of age that occurs around 45 to 50, where you have to say, the dreams of the past have now changed. Who am I going to be to the future? And the end is closer than the beginning. And I think you either sink or swim at that point of life, and that also can sink or swim a relationship. So you see two couples, one dealing with it perhaps surprisingly well, and one to disastrous consequences, not dealing with this change very well. So yeah, that's what the film's about.
And then you were talking about the relationships too. That's one of the things I really noticed too, because even though they had that link of the brother and sister, you had these two couples that had one relationship in one way, and I don't want to talk too much about it, but you had one relationship one way, you had another one the other way, and you would think one would last longer than the other, but it's one of those, the unexpected happens because relationships are very difficult things. How do you feel that the actors were able to pull off some of those performances, especially with how different the situations were?
For me, I mean, I work with only really great actors, and luckily we had a great Chicago casting company, PR Casting, that hooked us up with some amazing players. But I think the actors really dug in because we did a series of workshops for almost a year with writer Carlos Trevino, helping come up with some of the characters and the relationships. So the actors had a chance to live with these characters for a full year, which is really rare. In most cases, actors fly in and they might meet the person they're supposed to be married to like 4 hours before they're supposed to shoot their scenes. In this case, two of our actors, Sara Sevigny and Antoine McKay, who are both in Empire, had a chance to live with these characters for a full year before the film was shot.
Okay. So out of all the neighborhoods, I know you guys said Rogers Park is where you guys have lived. What was some of the things that really drew you to Rogers Park? Because this was the first place you guys moved to. What drew you to the neighborhood when you guys first came?
Well, he teaches at Northwestern, so we were interested in finding a place near Evanston, and obviously Rogers Park, being the northernmost neighborhood in Chicago, is the closest to Evanston. It's also very affordable. It's also very relaxed. It's also pretty quiet. It's almost, on some days it feels a little suburban, but it's right next to the beach, and it's got a lot of great markets, and there's a lot of great stuff happening in Rogers Park.
I mean, it's also a really diverse community. We have always lived in diverse communities, whether it was Bushwick in New York, whether it was the East Side in Austin. I want to be in a place where lots of different type of people are in communication and dialogue with each other. I don't want to be stuck out, God bless, far west or far north Chicago, but monocultures, places where you're not going to come into contact with people who are not like you. So that's why I like Rogers Park.
Now, do you guys have any plans on any more films that are going to be filmed in Chicago, whether it's Rogers Park or any part of the whole?
Yeah, I am developing a project right now with a writer, Philister Sigadu, about elder care, and in particular, an elder care worker, African-American woman in the South Side who has to come back and forth every day to take care of an older white woman far north. I'm really interested in exploring with these actors and writers the divide between North and South in Chicago, which I think still exists in a city that's incredibly segregated, and how the elder care boom, the need for these two communities probably very much to come into contact with each other at the end of life, is going to create a big crisis in this country that also is going to be a place where people are going to have to figure things out and start talking to each other.
Well, after today, because I think today is the last showing of Rogers Park, what are the plans for the film going forward? I know you have you're trying to get it in theaters. Any other plans for it?
Yeah, so it'll probably be playing in theaters, a few theaters here in late February, March of next year, and then will be available from, I'll say, a major streaming service probably by April of next year.
One last thing, and I wanted to ask, hear both your opinions, and this is something I would like you to talk to the audience about. Do you have any kind of advice for any aspiring film writers or directors who want to get into filmmaking at all, from either one of you?
You got some great advice.
You got the writer advice.
Oh, the writer advice? I say go from the heart. Write what you know about, write what you are interested in, and just keep writing as much as possible. It's great to come out to festivals. If you happen to meet directors, that's possibly some of the best way to start getting work done. Also, get a camera and start making your own stuff. There's plenty of opportunities for writers, well, especially here in Chicago, plenty of opportunities for writers to do sketch comedy and other kinds of work. And yeah, it's sort of up to you.
I would say, too, to be a filmmaker, you have to make films. So use any opportunity you can and use your resources wisely. Don't go into a huge amount of credit card debt. Speaking from past experiences, that's not going to help you make your next film.
Well, thank you so much, Carlos and Kyle. This is Ian from Entertainment Media, and we'll talk to you guys next time.